What's up, YouTube? This is Rodrigenhosen here at Station Hypo, my war room, named for the clandestine code-breaking operation staged in Hawaii during World War II. Coming here today after being inspired by the likes of General Hand Grenade and Hilltop Pillbox to make some videos for you. And there's a couple house rules that I'd like to showcase for you and get your guys' opinion on if you're willing. Global War 36 is an awesome game. I love it to death. It's the closest war game to scratching the itch that I have in wargaming, but it's not quite perfect. So, in my opinion, the developers made a wonderful base for a game. You got to pay close to $200 for the map, and then you got to build the whole thing from scratch yourself. So to me, that gives me plenty of license to develop the game the way I want to play it. You know, I don't have many friends that are going to want to play this with me. And the rules that I've developed aren't going to deviate so much from the game that it becomes unrecognizable. But I'm really excited about the ones that I want to showcase for you today and get your guys' opinion on them. So the rules that I want to share with you today are, first and foremost, a naval fleet stack limit, some updated oil rules to make it a little more fleshed out and simplified at the same time, naval air supremacy, new American war rules to make bringing the United States into the war, a little bit more interesting. And I feel like I'm missing one. Oh, radar rules. Yep, some new radar rules, which ties in with the naval rules that I've developed. So the one I'm most excited about, the one that I will start with, is my naval fleet stack limit. And I'm super excited about this one because I love the naval warfare in this game and Axis and Allies. I just think it's so cool. I love the models. I think the ship models just look fantastic and one of the coolest parts of the game for me. So one thing, my only complaint has ever been though, is that you get these giant fleet stacks that realistically no admiral ever would have been able to control, and then you never fight with them. You know, Japan doesn't want to lose their only navy, especially when they don't have the income to rebuild it. And this game does a great job of simulating the fact that you couldn't just drop an aircraft carrier out of the sky. So you want to protect those bad boys. You want to protect your battleships. You want to keep your navy alive, keep your navy going. But you're never going to fight with it. And that eliminates a huge fun portion of the game for me if you can't fight with your navy. So I believe this rule is going to mitigate that a little bit. So what I've done is decided that in any individual sea tile that does not contain a shipyard, you can only have 7 ships there, not counting transports or planes. So what this is going to do is open up some attritional warfare. You're going to have to compose your fleets in such a way that your big hitters are protected by screening vessels, so you're not throwing away big capital ships in battles that you shouldn't be fighting them with. You're not going to put 4 battleships up against 7 destroyers. You know, you'll probably kill those destroyers, but you'll lose a couple battleships, and a destroyer is a heck of a lot easier to replace than a battleship is. So limiting the fleet size to 7, to me, forces you to start thinking about fleet composition, getting some screening vessels, getting your heavy hitters protected by smaller vessels that you can, that you can afford to lose. You know what I mean? You can replace a couple destroyers, and then you're more willing to fight with that navy. You're more willing to come after some of these different islands out here. And I think that's really going to open up some interesting attritional warfare here, especially on the Pacific side of the board. So, in line with that, I've made radar not completely useless. In fact, I've already started researching it in my game with a couple different powers. And I don't know if you can really make it out. I've tried to make like a little radar screen there. It probably doesn't come out very well on the camera. Most of the stuff on this board I've made myself just because I'm a cheap ass and I don't have the money right now to spend on historical board gaming's fancy stuff, so I make a lot of my own stuff. But radar's not useless anymore. In line with the naval fleet stack of 7, radar on islands that you possess now cover all adjacent sea zones and allow you to fight with 2 more ships in that battle. So that's going to be huge. Now you think about it, if Japan's wanting a staging area to come here and invade Australia, maybe they'll actually come over Guadalcanal. You know, maybe you'll see some more historical play. You might see them coming after some of these islands. You know, it might incentivize them to go after the Philippines, Guam, New Guinea, Rabaul, all that good stuff early to get some staging areas to put naval bases and radar. so they can have a nice defensive screen against the United States. So another rule that goes in line with both the naval fleet stack limit and radar is naval air supremacy. So you see I got an attack bomber here, and obviously for role-playing purposes, you consider that a torpedo bomber when it's at sea. What I've decided is that when air units are involved in a naval combat, there's going to be one round of air supremacy fought, and obviously only taken from aircraft in that fight. After that, whatever side, like if either side has tactical bombers left, those bombers get first strike. Because historically, naval bombers were much more, devastating than the big guns. When you can strike somebody from 300 miles away and they never even see your ships, that's huge. So one thing these games have never seemed to push is the fact that naval air supremacy should be so important. And they do a good job of making carriers hard to develop in this, so you can't just spam them. And planes are expensive enough, nobody's got the income to just pump these things out with impunity. So they should be more devastating. You got to protect them. You're not going to have very many. You're not going to sit there and pump out 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 carriers throughout the game. You're not going to have the income. So they should hit hard, and they should be devastating when you lose them. And I think all that's going to tie in very well with the limit on fleets, because now you got to think very strongly about how you want to protect those carriers. And you want a way to take out that enemy fleet without losing those carriers. And so I think all that's going to tie in very nicely. Now, the naval air supremacy rule and the radar rules go hand in hand nicely, because where the radar allows you to fight with 2 extra ships, it also negates the enemy's first strike ability with their naval bombers. So now if they're bringing in a carrier with in this particular battle that I have set up, America doesn't have any naval bombers, but Japan does. So if Japan comes in here and attacks the United States got that radar there, they negate that first strike ability of the naval bombers. So now you can see how that opened up some interesting tactical play. United States might want to hold on to Midway, Wake, Guam, Philippines. If they want to start developing radar and get a fleet out here and maybe use it to protect all that, get some ships down there to block Japan, you're going to see a lot more interesting play than just 2 huge fleets that keep dancing around each other, never engaging. Plus, you have an incentive to actually develop radar, especially as the United States and Japan, where before it was probably the most useless thing, next to tits on a boar. So, I think it's going to open up some interesting play, but I'd be curious to see what you guys think. So, some of the final rules that I'd like to enumerate. One is I'm fascinated by the oil rules rule set, but I noticed when General Hand Grenade and Rank Carcass were playing at the Cat House, I believe they stopped using it because I think they had too much oil. I can't recall exactly, but it's not fun if there's no stakes. These kind of games are always more fun when there's something to lose, when there's stakes, and oil should be one of those stakes. Japan, they're fighting for oil. They're in a fight against the clock as much as they are against the United States, and so I think their quest for oil should really play a factor into this game. And so I've taken the oil rules and kind of made my own rules out of them, since they didn't quite hit the note that I wanted them to hit. So rather than having 1,000,000,001 different oil reserves scattered across the map that are hard to keep track of, everybody's just got one here in their capital. This should be in Tokyo. But everybody's just got their oil reserve there. All oil they accumulate goes straight there just to keep it simple. Keep track of it. Then you don't have to worry about however many oil reserves are spread across the map. From there, you disseminate it as you need. I have some other supply rules that involve planes and tanks and all that. I'm not going to get into it right now because my focus right now is the naval side of things. If this video gets even like 5 views, I'll probably share those other rules that I have. But for now, I'm going to keep it to the naval side of things. So you'll notice here in this little fleet that I have set up, I've got some oil tokens here. Now, these are assigned to an individual fleet. And since you have fleet limits of 7, you're going to have a bunch more fleets that you got to keep fueled. Now, you assign each fleet from a naval base or shipyard out of your home reserve, however many oil you think they're going to need to stay out. So each turn that this fleet is away from a shipyard, they consume an oil, whether they move or not. I want it to be, it's kind of nonsense to me that you could just sit there and camp oil and keep it. When you're at war, you're using it. Use it or lose it. So they're consuming oil, and your capital ships are obviously using one as well. When they get down to the last oil, say they're in this sea tile north of this, you know, they have that last oil, they spend that to get back to the Marshall Islands where they have a naval base. From this naval base, or a shipyard if you had one, from that naval base, as long as you can trace a supply path back to your home reserve, you can bring and refuel oil here. Now I know that's a little gamey, you know, realistically you'd need to have oil here. But I thought that'd get a little tedious if you had to stack oil here in order to refuel. I will say, however, that if you foresee the Americans giving you a headache and blocking some of this where you couldn't get a supply path back, you could ahead of time stack oil here at this naval base and then consume it from there and refuel that fleet and have them go wherever they need to go. You can do that if you want. But the goal here is just to make oil more valuable. Oil, you know, I want things to consume oil more, so you're really struggling for it eventually. And I'll get into that in another video where I expound on my revamped oil rules. But for now, I'm going to keep it to the naval side of things. So the final rule that I'd like to talk about is one that I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping to see how it works out here in this game that I'm playing. But one thing I noticed is that the goal seems to be for the Axis to keep America out of the war as long as possible. Keep America out. Well, that's fine and dandy if you're the Axis, but it sucks as the United States. And frankly, for me, it sucks as the Axis too, because I want to fight. I want to get out there and I want to knock some heads together. You know, if I'm Japan, I want to fight the United States. It's fun. It's interesting. So rather than the United States, when they get war declared on them, just ramping straight up to full wartime production, they don't. In my rule set, when you attack them, they get a quick bonus, and I'm thinking like 10 or 15 would be reasonable, but they don't ramp up straight to full wartime production. They get to start rolling their 2d12 every turn, but they're still going to have to work their way up to full wartime production. But they still get to fight, still get to develop stuff, still get to have the benefits of their allies and lend-lease, all that stuff. You know, for all intents and purposes, they're fighting. They're in the war. You know, they're in a dogfight now. And this opens up some really interesting gameplay on the Pacific theater, I believe, because now Japan has an incentive to attack earlier, especially if they start developing that radar. They develop that radar, and you start taking these forward bases where you can, put naval bases and put radar and start refueling ships up close to the United States. And now, anytime they're developing ships, you're right in their face. You know, you're going to keep America on the back foot. America's going to be in a fight for their life. You know what I mean? They might still eventually be able to win out and conquer you, but they're in a fight for their life now. Now America's not bored. You know, the player's not bored thinking about, oh crap, when the heck am I ever going to get in the game? And Japan's sitting here like, I don't really have anybody but China to beat up on. This kind of sucks. You know, now it's truly a global war, I think. So this rule might end up sucking and blow up in my face maybe, but I'm going to test it out and see how it works. I'm excited for it. I love the United States. Obviously, I'm a red-blooded American, so I want America fighting. I want them beating up these rascals that bombed us. So I really think that's going to open up some interesting attritional play, you know, for both sides. So that's really about all I got. If you guys got any questions, if anybody even watches this, I would love to answer them. I enjoy watching the folks' videos for the global war community, seeing what people develop, you know, ideas that they have for the game. You know, this game is bordering on an obsession of mine. You know, I've built my own table, build my own stuff all the time for this. You know, it doesn't look the greatest, some of these things, you know, but I have a blast doing it. And so I'd like to thank General Hand Grenade and Hilltop for getting me into doing this and for providing good content for us to watch. And, you know, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this kind of stuff. Let me know. So, I've been Rodrigan Hosen here in beautiful Tama, Iowa. Later.